All right, we're at 11 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. We'll just let others join as they as they get time and wrap up past meetings. So I want to thank everyone for joining today. As a reminder, today is focused on optimizing data workflows with Microsoft Fabric. But before we get started, I just had a few housekeeping items. So everybody's going to receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the recording, an overview of AVASOFT's capabilities, and a PDF one-pager with some information on our offerings that directly relate to today's content. Also, in order to keep today as collaborative as possible, please make sure to use the chat and Q&A to ask questions, and we'll make sure to get answers as quickly as possible. Some we may answer in the chat if it's a shorter answer. Others will wait towards the end to read out loud to the presenter. That way we can give a more comprehensive and informative answer. And just as a final item, if you find today's content helpful, make sure to check out our other webinars to get access to all of our other great content, both past and present, that we've had going on throughout this year. With that, our presenter today is Sarvesh, so I will hand it off to him to get started. Thanks again. Take it away, Sarvesh.
Thanks, Chuck. Morning, guys, and thanks for joining in. And today's webinar topic is going to be around optimizing your ETL workloads in Fabric. And without further ado, let's get started. So just to give you a brief introduction about AVASOFT and who we are. So we are a leading digital transformation strategy company, and we typically focus on holistic product-centric approach on digital transformations with AI as our primary focus on all those transformations. And we are committed to providing you the best services from, through implementing leading edge technologies and to make sure that you get the maximum ROI from all your technical investments you want to do from a technology and a data perspective as well. And just a brief introduction about myself. I have over half a decade of experience implementing data solutions across Microsoft space, and I co-lead the Microsoft data practice over here at AVASOFT with another colleague of mine. And we have over 100 plus certified data engineers on the Azure and the Fabric space, and we're committed to delivering the best quality solutions across the Microsoft space in data. So as a general agenda of what we're going to cover today, just a brief introduction of all the specific needs of why we need to optimize data workloads in Fabric, and what are the options and strategies that Fabric provides for optimizing your specific data-driven solutions or your data pipelines. Brief introduction to task flows and how they would help you orchestrate your data workflows in Fabric. An introduction to real-time analytics and its benefits in now transitioning from summary-based or analytics to real-time analytics and what that looks like in Fabric environment. How Copilot could now be integrated with all of your ETL workloads, and how Copilot could help speed up the development and the design process of implementing them in Fabric. And as a final bit, we're going to touch upon the importance of governance in as part of your ETL workloads, and how Fabric makes it a tad bit easier to implement them in your environment, and make sure you get the best features of everything in a single environment, and how that typically looks like. And then we'll open up the session for Q&A to answer all your questions, and we'll go for it from there. Starting off, I want to highlight the importance, or touch base on the importance and benefits of why we need to strategize our environment to basically make sure we have all the necessary aspects of data strategy and optimizing your workloads. So this is just a general introduction. In today's era, organizations want to collect data from multiple formats, multiple places. They want to collect it from databases, web services, mobile apps for a variety of use cases and a variety of things. And each data has its own need behind the scenes, has its own use cases. And the senior leadership wants a qualified report of all your data put together. And some of the use cases where this stems from is either, if you run a marketing agency, you would have to do social media analysis, plug data from a bunch of social media platforms. Or if you run a retail business, you would want to collect data from your commerce platform, your bunch of tweets, bunch of tickets where error logs, emails, wherever that is, and make sure you run sentiment analysis to make sure the customer feedback is as positive and how you can help them better. So those are use cases where you're going to have to now plug your data from different sources and different formats and now store them in one singular layer. And now diversity doesn't become your only hurdle. Now you're going to have to handle high data volume as your organization scales up. And the veracity and the velocity of the data also needs to be taken into account. And you would not just want to process data once a day, and maybe have to process data more frequently to make the right decisions during the day as well when you scale your organization up, and speed becomes um, another hurdle. And the third hurdle that you're going to face typically is once you have a lot of pipelines in place and there's a lot of complex transformation or business logic that you want to implement on top of all of them. So with each rule that you're going to introduce into your business logic, that adds another layer of complexity that you're going to have to deal with. And now making sure you have the right strategy and then the right design in implementing your retail workflows becomes paramount and necessary. So, and on top of all of this, as your retail workload scale, you're gonna typically run into resource constraints and performance bottlenecks if you do not right size your capacity or right size your compute that comes with your retail platform and your workloads. So, if this is not in place, you're gonna end up with a lot of overwhelmed systems, a lot of increased costs in ownership. From an IT perspective, you're going to get reduced efficiency and you're not going to get the ROI that you typically thought that you invested for. And this is where typically all of this can be immediately, sorry, all of this can be immediately work through Fabric as well. Here's a full-blown architecture of what a typical use case in Fabric would look like. So you have a plethora of data sources. You have data that's coming in from your Azure data sources. You have data coming in from Snowflake for your customer data and your campaign data. You plug in IoT data from your sensors and basically your inventory warehouses, and then you have data from cross platforms coming in from Amazon S3, and all of these can be ingested in a myriad of ways in Fabric. So you could do it in three separate ways. Data ingestion is made typically easier in Fabric space with an extensive library of connectors that support all of these data sources. So you're not querying them through an API, you're querying them through direct connectors that are generally available. And this promotes, part of the ETL aspect where you can easily connect to your data. And another feature of this is shortcuts now provide a mechanism for integrating that data without taking a copy of it in your own environment. So now you don't have to deal with duplicates in your data. You don't have to deal with data redundancy. All of it is just one copy of your data that exists in your centralized data called OneData. And there's three different ways where you could ingest the data. You could ingest it through data pipelines. You could ingest through data flows, which are your component-based data solutions that my Fabric provides. Or if you're code savvy and you want to write your own PySpark notebooks or Spark SQL notebooks, you're welcome to do those, explore those options as well. Once all of this is now done, you have a centralized storage layer called OneLake, where all of your data is now centrally stored. And this minimizes data silos and data inconsistencies. And on top of this, there are multiple serverless compute engines. So if you want to utilize Spark for your notebooks, you can. If you want to utilize T-SQL for your data warehousing and your real-time analytics notebooks, you can. If you want to use your KQL engine or your analysis services for RTI and your BI workloads, can. And all of this is governed by the compute that you invest in from holistically from a Fabric perspective. And you could do all of these in one singular platform, eliminating the need for multiple solutions to drive the value that you want to get for your business. Segueing from this is how this now becomes immediately beneficial to your organization, or the immediate value that you can get from your organization as part of this. So the six different aspects of this. One is there's a plethora of data connectors that Fabric provides. So you could immediately connect to a wide variety of data sources and cross-platform sources as well. And you could ingest them into your Fabric environment and have a centralized data set. And now this brings into perspective the concept of one lake, where once you've integrated all of your data, now you don't have to deal with disparate data streams. You don't have to deal with disparate data sets. All of them is available in one singular layer called one lake. And that is your singular copy of data that everybody in the organization now consumes. The third aspect of it is there's two different streams of AI integrated workloads. One of them being Copilot, where you don't have to write your own code. You could you could talk to a chatbot called Copilot, which through natural language, you could converse with Copilot through English or your preferred language that you've set up in your tenant, and you could get code snippets for your data, making sure you now code now get where you want to faster. And also you could leverage the pre-built foundational models if you wanted to predictive modeling, or if you're more tech savvy in the AI space, you could build out your own custom models to get the predictive analytics that you want. Segueing into one lake, right? So now the centralized storage opens up opportunities for easier governance. So now if you want to actually set up access controls, and also want to set up sensitivity labels, and also make sure you have automated rules for personally identifiable information or by data, you could actually set them up in Microsoft Purview, make sure it's inherited across all your Fabric workloads so that all your data is now masked and is now masked downstream, not just upstream at the data source layer. And it now trickles down to all your workflows. And you now could take the easy route of making governance easier. And all you need to do is monitor your data once all those policies have been applied. There's two other aspects of this. One is Fabric is more cost effective as compared to other solutions in the market. One of them being all of these workloads, all of the compute, all of the data storage that I talked about lives as a SaaS solution, as a package SaaS solution. So you're just investing on holistic compute that you buy for that as SaaS solution. And once that's done, you could tap into a myriad of components, you could tap into a myriad of workflows, and you could set them up the way you want. And this is highly advisable for mid-market and enterprise solutions as well, because if you're only looking to process a part of your data in Fabric, you could start off small with a smaller capacity, and then you could scale up as and when your data needs evolve, and you have multiple use cases that you want to support behind the scenes. So here's a general introduction where task flows make your orchestration a little bit easier. So task, task flows is a unified way where it now makes it very simpler to orchestrate and manage your ETL processes within a single workspace. So if you have a workspace in Fabric, all you need to do is pick and choose whichever template that you want. So there's a bunch of predefined templates that you can immediately tap into to orchestrate your workflows, where you could ingest your data, prepare your data, model and train your data based on the historical data that's available. And you could tap into your predictive analytics as well. You could prepare them, massage the data, visualize them in your BI layer, which is Power BI. And if you can set up alerts even, let's say something goes wrong in your sales aspect and you're not meeting targets, you can immediately send out emails to a bunch of senior leadership or a bunch of people to make sure they look into the dashboard and make sure the necessary action items are captured as part of it. So now this gives you this give this gives you a running start in terms of how you want to orchestrate them, or you could build out custom task flows as well. And all of this can be holistically controlled in a workspace, and all of this can be easily set up. You could define sensitivity labels, you could define governance around these workflows, and orchestration becomes a breeze with the introduction of task flows as well. Here are 5 different ways where you could optimize your ETL workloads pretty easier through Fabric's data components. So the 5 different solutions are, first of being you want to modelize your design. So if you have multiple facets of your ETL process, you want to break them down as granular as possible. So maybe if you have 5 different sales processes that are running, you want to granularize them. You want to make sure that they're modular. And these can be done through either Fabric's pipelines or data flows, where they provide a component-based approach to build out your ETL workloads. And you could combine those components to specific ETL processes that you want to build out. And you could easily split them out and utilize them in your task flows in separate workspaces, and make sure the analytics of those reports are driven by those workloads, and you could go forth from there. So this allows for targeted updates on targeted dashboards, and also it makes sure you're not disrupting a bunch of other pipelines, but you're focusing on what needs to be done in specific areas to orchestrate your workloads. Data partitioning is the second aspect. By if you're dealing with large data sets, you might want to partition your data so that your read and write operations are faster. And this can be done through either a lakehouse component or the warehouse component in Fabric, where you could break your data down. You could make sure you're limiting the amount of rows that you're scanning per request that comes in, and you could partition them in a myriad of ways. You could partition them by uh, your time dimension, or you could partition them by the frequency of the data request that you get. And this makes sure that at least your read and write operations for subset of data is very faster. Fabric computes are fairly cheaper in comparison to other workloads. So if you want to um, parallelly process a bunch of workloads, you could mix and match your capacities on at multiple levels, or you could turn on auto scale and invest in a higher capacity to make sure you're getting your workloads and you meet your SLAs while running your ETL workloads. The fourth aspect of it is caching your data. You would typically cache a subset of your data within the data warehouse component in Fabric. This These are for frequently asked requests or frequently asked data points, where now you could cache a bunch of your data within the warehouse layer. And this can be easily consumed in your reporting layer for real-time dashboards or for real-time intelligence, or you could even cache your data for up to a year so that your Power BI refreshes now happen a lot faster. And all of this now contributes to lesser wait times, lesser processing times on all of your data, and make sure you get your data analytics faster as compared to other solutions out there. And finally, you would implement a metadata-driven approach in your lakehouse layer, where all of your jobs are now intrinsically driven through the metadata that you have. And this can be done typically through pipelines or notebooks and through a lakehouse component that are available. Another aspect of this is governance, where you could set up monitoring dashboards. There are a pre-built set of monitoring dashboards that are intrinsically available, but you could also build out your custom dashboards that you want to set up in your Fabric environment and monitor them as needed. So moving on, typically organizations are shifting from traditional batch processing approaches, where you process your data through on either a daily basis, once or twice a day, or even a hourly basis to real-time analytics. And the need for transition is a veracity of data and the velocity of data. Basically, businesses that are operating in either e-commerce or financial services or supply chain management cannot afford to wait for end of the day reports or start of the day reports. They need constant visibility into their transactions or either their processes, um, to make sure that they remain competitive and react to those specific operational data points and be proactive about it rather than reactive. And the way that Fabric solves this or contributes to the solution is the real-time hub or the real-time intelligence that now is pieced together in Fabric. So instead of now pulling your data once a day, twice a day, or even hourly, you now have the ability to pull in from multiple streaming sources. And as and when your data comes into the Fabric layer, it's processed through the event stream and the event house. You could query all of those items through KQL. And there's a bunch of action items that you could immediately leverage to make sure you could consume them in your reporting layer. You could send out a bunch of alerts either in Teams, Outlook, or build out your custom workflows in Power Automate to send out reports to a bunch of people. So the possibilities are endless, and this unified design simplifies the orchestration of real-time workloads instead of investing in multiple different solutions and multiple different platforms. This now reduces the complexity of how your solutions are now being structured within a single platform, and it's very robust, very reliable, and very scalable as your business needs evolve as well. And just to touch upon a few benefits of real-time analytics, one of them being this is a unified solution that needs or that eliminates the need to assemble different solutions put together. So this is a consolidated approach that streamline data ingestion, transformation, and analysis in one singular layer. So you're not investing in three different components. You're just investing in a single component that is all three for you. And the second part of it is security is built and is the primary piece that governs all of this. So when you're building a real-time workload, there's a lot of sensitive data that comes through the platform. So all your policies that are defined at the tenant layer now trickles down to all of your real-time workloads as well. This makes sure that your organization stays compliant and all your sensitive information is protected as and when it goes through the system. The third piece of it is the AI integration piece, where Copilot that I mentioned is also embedded in the real-time analytics piece, where it helps you query your data as and when the data comes in. It also understands new data and new personal data that comes in. And you could build your foundational models on top of your real-time data to now predict data as they come through instead of waiting for a process that runs daily um, to integrate or predict your data within AI or to integrate AI and ML workloads into your system. And lastly, all of this is now being centralized as well. All the data that comes through real-time analytics now is structured, can be structured in a single unified layer. And all of that now simplifies the data discovery process. All of that simplifies the data sharing process. And it makes sure that governance that's set up across and the entirety of your platform is also made easier as well. So I want to touch upon a couple of roadmaps that talks about if you're looking to invest in Fabric, or if you're choosing to adopt Fabric, the types of benefits or the roadmap on how it typically looks like. If you're looking to migrate all of your ETL workloads into Fabric with the ROI that it comes with, you would typically start off with assessing and planning your basic infrastructure and setting up your lakehouse and data pipelines, because that now becomes the foundation of or that now sets the groundwork for all of your other workloads that you might want to set up in the long run. And the first phase of all of this is your integration and warehousing, where you're now integrating data across different sources and setting up a data warehouse or a data lakehouse behind the scenes. You would also want to set up your data quality and governance frameworks, and also make sure you prepare for your advanced analytics aspects of it. You could set up descriptive dashboards that typically talk about what your current revenue spend is and what your other aspects of your business tie up to. And generally, you now prepare and massage the data and make sure your data foundation is consistent and is readily available for business users. And once that is done, you can move into your advanced analytics and AI aspect of it, where if you now want to go a little bit deeper into your data maturity or data literacy aspect of it, you could now build foundational models to predict out your data. And you could also now invest in real-time analytics to make sure stay agile with all of the processes that you've built. And you could also invest in specific chatbots and Q&A that are AI driven. So now you now have the ability to talk to your data and not just consume it. And all of this at this point paves the way for prescriptive analytics rather than descriptive and predictive analytics, where you now have a lot of options to or you now consume data in a different manner, where stay ahead of your competitors and make sure that paves the way for a lot of advanced visualization options and a lot of data-driven decision making as well. Once you have this entire piece set up, all that now that's left is to make sure you govern and you monitor and you optimize all of your data sets and your data processes to make sure that your IT spend is kept within bounds. So that involves performance tuning across all of your ETL workloads, making sure you also democratize your data and share it with a bunch of business users within the organization, so that now paves the way for a lot of other canned reports to make it into the system. Expansion to other new data sources in the market. Maybe you want to consume from third-party sources or external labor market data or external data that's generally available, and consume them within your system for additional analytics and visualization operations that can come through. And this now paves the way for a culture of data-driven decision making and a data-driven processes in your organization. So now you make decisions based off your data and not just consume it for specific use cases behind the scenes. So this is a typical roadmap for a greenfield implementation where you do not have Fabric in place. But if you are utilizing Fabric for a select few use cases, you could expand upon that to also include a lot of the other use cases where, if you only have a sales-driven process or a financial-driven process that's in Fabric, and rest of your workloads are set up in another layer, you could typically, here's where AVASOFT as a company could help you migrate all of these workloads a little bit easier. So we could immediately assess and plan or your entire environment on your existing data sets, your existing reports, and your existing workloads that are there in your other environments. We could also perform a gap analysis of what's missing and what needs to be set up per best practices across the organization, and where you lack specific aspects of data processing and which ones could be done better. It provide you a tailored roadmap and specific configurations on what needs to be set up in your Fabric layer, and a full-blown governance approach on how to manage all of these workloads upfront. And once we have assessed all of your workloads, and once we have a plan or strategy to move forward, we could do a pilot migration of specific set of workloads, maybe just your sales data, maybe just your marketing data or your finance data, and you could see the immediate value that Fabric provides. And you could tailor your feedback, and we would will all of those would be looped in back into your ETL processes, and we could set up a performance baseline and set up monitoring in the way that it needs to be set up per governance, and we could cut them over and sunset your older sales processes in your older platform. And once the business or is completely validated, you could move on to a full-blown migration where all of your workspaces now could be migrated. All of your other workloads can now be migrated in similar way, and you would have a fully operational data environment in Fabric, and you could now monitor and govern all of these workspaces, monitor and govern all of these data workloads through pre-built dashboards or custom dashboards that you want to have built in your organization and go through. There's a sample use case of that where if you're using Azure Synapse Analytics or if you're using Azure Data Factory, all of those workloads can now be simplified into data engineering and data warehousing or data factory workloads in your Fabric environment. But the added advantage of that is the complexity of your real-time workloads or your real-time intelligence workloads are now being made very simpler with the real-time intelligence piece that has been brought through from Fabric. And this provides a lot of agility and a lot of versatility to your data processing needs. And all of this can be governed through a centralized data storage system, which is one lake. All of this is governed by common compute. And all of this now paves the way for advanced analytics through your data science workloads and visibility through your existing Power BI dashboards. And this now provides a holistic system of all your data-driven workloads. So you do not have to now invest in two separate platforms called Synapse or Data Factory with Power BI. All of them is governed through Fabric, and you now pay a lot less for your data, all your data workloads as well. Another aspect that needs to get talked about is Copilot and now how it integrates with all of your systems within Fabric. So whether you're just building out specific pipelines with your data factory component in Fabric, or if you're just spinning up a specific data warehouse, or um, if you're using a combination of these workloads put together, Copilot now integrates into all of these workloads. And a few similar use cases of how Copilot helps is provided here. If you're using a component-based code repository such as Data Factory or your pipelines or anywhere else, it gives you specific code snippets, or it even builds out sample workflows for you. So if you wanted to have email alerts sent out for specific components, Copilot can immediately build those out for you. Or if you wanted to specifically need help with writing T-SQL queries and get the results, or if you're not really familiar with your data dictionary or data discovery, those processes can be immediately be facilitated with Copilot, where it writes a query for you to understand the data that sits behind your warehouse, and all of those processes can be made simpler with the warehouse layer with Copilot integrated into it as well. The data engineering and data science workloads also do benefit from Copilot, where if you want to specifically write notebooks or specifically want to train your ML model or need help with training them, Copilot can help with that as well. And Fabric databases, which is an additional aspect to Fabric's own arsenal. You could also write T-SQL queries and make sure you get all of your data out from your Fabric databases as well. There's also Fabric built into the real-time intelligence piece of it in Fabric, where you could now write cluster queries to tap into your data real time and understand what's happening behind the scenes um, through data that's been fed through IoT or your um, physical warehouses that operations deals with. And you can also create report pages, or you can also create specific summaries, or even build out your reports faster through Copilot that's being integrated through that. And here's where governance comes into play with all of these workloads put together. With the way organizations are set up, there's a lot of expectations and demand to get out a bunch of workloads or a bunch of processes out faster, and that typically demands a lot of people work together. A lot of people collaborate together between multiple teams, between multiple environments, and that not only depends on it's now not only on the IT to move faster, but it's across the organization. So here's how simple CI/CD setup in Fabric can now break that process down and can now also make it easier. So any user that now wants to create a new artifact or want to change a relevant artifact in Fabric can now easily set up an Azure DevOps repository where you have multiple pipelines that deal with multiple code structures, and it's a copy of them between your feature branch and then your main branch and your development branch. And all of those code repositories are now tied to your Azure DevOps Azure DevOps repositories. And all of those repositories can also be tied up with your Fabric workspaces behind the scenes. So multiple people can now collaborate on multiple different notebooks, multiple different pipelines, multiple different data flows, multiple different reporting structures behind the scenes, and they can make the changes that they want to. But committing the code to a higher environment is governed by a set of IT architects or a set of business leaders put together in conjunction with those IT architects. So you control the code that is being pushed to production, and we make sure all the necessary best practices are met, all the necessary aspects are now met. And this now makes it easier for changes to happen. So we're not impeding a certain person's progress on a certain area, but rather just governing them and making sure we guide them through the right steps and the right direction to move faster and move their code to production a lot faster. Another aspect of this with dealing sensitive data is also made easier through Fabric and Purview, where there's three specific aspects that you can get immediate value out of implementing Purview with your Fabric environment. Where if you want to set up sensitivity labels in Fabric for personal data points, specifically credit card data, specifically customer names that need to get masked across your warehouse or your databases before you share it or expose them to multiple other people. You could set up sensitivity labels, and there's downstream inheritance intrinsically built inside your Lakehouse component, where any data workflows that's built out of that initially ingested data point also inherits those labels. And anywhere you consume those data, it's always masked behind the scenes. And this consistent enforcement of data security policies, where it's not just a singular component that where policies are applied. It's across your Fabric environment, be it your Fabric databases, be it your data lake storage, or be it data that's consumed from S3 buckets, or even data that's exposed to your reporting layer. All of those are governed by the same set of policies that you set at a tenant level. And it also makes sure that we have data loss prevention and data loss prevention capability set up, and a specific set of policies that govern them in the specific Fabric environment. And this makes sure that sensitive data does not end up in the wrong locations, or it now makes sure that if there's sensitive data in your workspace, you cannot uh, invite external users or share the data to external users until it's being approved by a specific data steward or a data owner in the company. So all of those rules are intrinsically built out, not user-specific rules, but those are intrinsically built out in the Fabric environment that now helps you focus on other aspects instead of building out a robust data governance layer by your own. But you could just leverage the existing policies that are there in the Fabric layer. And with all of these all of the aspects that we went through, we can now open the session for Q&A if you guys have this.
All right, thanks, Sarvesh. So I have 3 questions. It seems like they all kind of relate to a potential pilot. So the first one is, for a pilot, how long is an average pilot for something like this?
It depends on their existing workloads that they have set up and the workload that they want to start with. A typical pilot usually starts off between 2 to 4 weeks, depending on what they want to achieve. So if it's just a reporting jumpstart or a reporting pilot, that gets done pretty faster. And if it's a full-blown lakehouse and a reporting jumpstart, it goes to 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. Is there a cost to these assessments, and is there any funding options for them?
Yes. So we break down the cost typically by the requirement that comes in. So if you want to process a lot of your data and you want to commit to a higher jumpstart, in the sense if you want to visualize multiple aspects of your data points put together, that comes up at a higher price point. And as and when you relax on your requirements, you go up to a lower price points. And yes, there are Microsoft Commerce incentives that you can tap into based on based on the based on your data requirements, that we now be able to provide you specific discounts as part of those initiatives as well.
Okay. And the last one I feel like might be targeted more towards a pilot, but it doesn't specifically mention pilot, but it asks what you feel is the most common connector to start with. It came
The
in when
most com-
you were mentioning things like the IoT and all those different connectors, so I assume it was related to those connectors.
the way I
So,
would answer this is the most common use case of a connector that I've seen used typically basically your SQL connectors that connect to your on-prem systems, because a lot of them have not migrated to the cloud per se. But Fabric also does provide 149 other connectors that lets you connect to a myriad of sources. I know IoT is one of them because I brought in real-time intelligence. Common use cases for them is operational systems where you need to keep your rooms under a certain temperature and you want to monitor those temperatures and you want to get alerts sent out to a bunch of teams that are working at the in the field of operations. So all of those can now be tailored through a bunch of IoT devices, and you could also consume data through other sources as well.
okay. Going through both the Q&A and the chat, it doesn't look like that we have any more questions for you. So again, I did want to get a final thank you to you and to everyone who attended. So just as a final reminder to everybody, don't forget to check out all of the other great content that we have coming up, both in the data space and across the entire Microsoft ecosystem. And as always, we'd be happy to schedule some time with anybody who's interested in talking more about pilot production, funding options, whatever your flavor might be that you want to discuss. So once again, thank you everybody, and looking forward to seeing you on the next one.